All right, here we go. This is a big, heavy pile of paper, but we're going to go through it on today's edition of the Town Meeting Talk Show. Thank you for being with us here on KLAM. We are brought to you by Cordova Wireless Communications, your local cell phone provider, which provides your local talk program, this one. And let me start right off the bat by pointing out that the council meeting from last night, and this is the show, by the way, Thursday, April the 2nd. The council meeting from last night is posted on our website and probably by now also on the city's YouTube channel, so you can actually take your pick because they're both audio only. This time they didn't turn the cameras on for the video on the city's YouTube channel, so it's going to be an audio experience either way. And I would really urge anybody that didn't have a chance to listen to that meeting last night to do so today. In fact, if you have time, maybe right after this highly important program, give a listen to that, because there was some interesting testimony speaking to what really seems to be the big issue right now, and that is, can Cordova / should Cordova kind of shut the borders down? There are a lot of people that believe very strongly that the town should be heading in that direction, as some of the remote villages, especially the native villages, have done, while there are others that say that there are difficulties in doing something like that because of what may happen to the biomass if it isn't fished, and the fact that fishing is recognized at the state and federal level as critical infrastructure, not from an economic standpoint as much as a food supply standpoint. And particularly toward the end of the meeting last night, when they had kind of the open phones portion, which they had some trouble with. I guess there were technical issues for part of the last night's meeting, but Mayor Copeland found a way to use his cell phone to take testimony. And Luke Borer and Siwan Gelbach, I remember I was listening toward the end, both made good points. And then there was some counterpoint in the council comments. I thought about actually lifting those, some examples of those, and putting them in this show, but I don't think I'm going to have time. So I would urge you, at the very least, listen to maybe the last, if you don't have time to listen to the whole council meeting, at least listen to the very last 20 to 30 minutes. But I really, with all the information that was shared, if you want to get a good sense of what the city's doing in terms of response, listening to that whole meeting, I mean, it's a 2-hour meeting, but listening to what they have to say about the COVID-19 situation would probably be very informative. I want to read through the document that is kind of at the center of recent efforts to suggest that Cordova can and should sort of close down the town in order to try to continue avoiding having any positive cases of COVID-19. It was referenced in the council meeting, and its technical designation is Alaska Small Community Emergency Travel Order, Attachment B. You can see this on the state website, coronavirus.alaska.gov, if you want to read it. But I'm going to read through it here because it's central to the back and forth on this topic of should Cordova basically close its borders. It says, to prevent the spread of disease caused by the coronavirus, COVID-19, the state of Alaska is issuing this order based on its authority under the Public Health Disaster Emergency Declaration signed by Governor Mike Dunleavy on March 11th. This order remains in effect until amended, rescinded, or superseded by further order of the governor. Certain emergency travel is imperative during the COVID-19 pandemic for both public health and safety, as well as community well-being. That's kind of the preface. What the order says here now in Attachment B, it says this order is applicable to Alaskan communities that are removed from the road system, have a population smaller than 3,000, and do not house a hub hospital managed by the tribal healthcare system. That's how this document defines a small community. And what the small community travel order says for small communities that are defined that way is that a small community may adopt travel restrictions that are more restricted than otherwise permitted in Health Mandate 12. Health Mandate 12, by the way, was the one about traveling between cities in Alaska. Small communities may not prohibit or restrict in any manner the following emergency travel. Emergency first responders, that includes fire, ambulatory services, and other emergency first responders, cannot restrict law enforcement acting within their official duties. This includes federal, state, and local law enforcement personnel. And also cannot restrict Office of Children's Services personnel responding to reports of child abuse and neglect and ensuring child safety. So, on the face of it, that sounds like a slam dunk, and I know a lot of people feel that way. Unfortunately, though, there are some complications. One of them, I imagine, and to be honest, I haven't had a chance to hear the whole council meeting, so they may not have covered that yet, but I know that the city has been looking into this small community travel order, and part of what they have to determine is if Cordova qualifies. On the face of it, it seems like we do, but there may be some provisions in this that cause us not to, and I know that the lawyers have been looking into that and so forth. So again, if you want the definitive information from the city on how they're doing looking at that, listen to the council meeting. Here's the other complication. Right in the order, it says that air carriers and other travel-related businesses conducting travel to small communities shall inquire if travelers are permitted to travel under this order and shall rely upon a traveler's assurance that they are eligible to travel. Air carriers and other travel-related businesses shall have no other duty or obligation to verify that travelers meet the criteria for permissible travel under this order. So, in layman's terms, the order doesn't turn Alaska Airlines check-in people into police. People are expected to self-police on this, and that does raise obvious questions. You know, a lot of people have asked me online as I've been participating in various threads and conversations when I've pointed out different provisions in these mandates and travel orders and so forth, they'll react by saying, well, how's anybody going to enforce that? And I always say, I don't know. I'm not saying that the provision in the mandate or the travel order or whatever is good or bad. I'm just relaying what it says. Because sometimes people, on social media will accidentally misstate what's in one of these things or misinterpret what it says. And, in my job, I sort of feel an obligation to paste in the text and say, this is actually what it says. But as far as enforcement, I don't know anything more than anybody else, which is funny because it kind of seems to irk people sometimes. But, this is lawyery kind of stuff as far as how they're going to enforce it. And if you have questions about how it might be enforced, you might consider sending an email to that key address that we're using in Cordova, the cordovaprepared@yahoo.com. They may know and may be able to answer. I don't know if eventually this will get to the point that they'll actually put people, law enforcement people, at airports or ferry terminals or something, and people will have to go through the line or show documentation. I don't think that's happening yet. I haven't heard that it is, at any rate. But I know that there are people around the state that are interested in seeing that happen. while at the same time there are civil rights-oriented people saying, that's like the Soviet Union saying papers, please. So, again, that's a tough issue, and I'm not sure how they're going to deal with that. But if you want to look at this document and see how it strikes you, again, it's Attachment B for State Mandate 12. So go to coronavirus.alaska.gov, scroll down, and find the section for Mandate 12, and then you'll see Attachment B, the Alaska Small Community Emergency Travel Order. And again, a lot of people are holding this up as proof that Cordova can and should basically close its borders, which on the surface sounds viable, but, as always, there's probably more to it. And again, not only because the lawyers need to evaluate whether Cordova can do that if we qualify as a small community per the intention of this emergency travel order, but then also the fact that it's on the honor system. And human nature being what it is, on the honor system, there are people who are going to follow the law out of altruism. There'll be people who will follow it because they don't want to get caught. And then there will be people who won't care and who will do what they want. So, like I say, I'm not an enforcement expert, but you can take a look at the document yourself and see what you think. All right, that took longer than I thought. Let's move on to the latest news release from the city that came out yesterday at 5 p.m. That was on April 1st, this release. If you want to look at this, go to cityofcordova.net if you want to read it. And this provides some updates on where the city is at regarding some of the concerns that have been shared with them. And information in this document may have made more progress at the council meeting last night. So again, that council meeting is a very good source. If you're following this very carefully and want to know what's going on, make the time to listen to that council meeting. So as of April 1st at 5 p.m., still no confirmed positive cases of COVID-19. Still at 0 officially. The first section in this news release is processor plans. That's been a big topic of conversation. And it says the City of Cordova Incident Management Team continues to work closely with processors and local leaders in the commercial fishing industry to ensure compliance with state and city mandates, provide clarification on protocols, communicate local expectations, assist in planning of mitigation measures, and provide expert guidance from local healthcare professionals. All processors are submitting plans to the state of Alaska and the city of Cordova detailing how they plan to quarantine all staff arriving from out of town for 14 days. Some plans may even include closing their campus to incoming and outgoing traffic altogether or keeping staff on premises for the entire season. Each processor also plans to transport new arrivals directly from the airport to their facility. While they will still be allowed to work during their quarantine, newly arrived staff will remain on property and separate from the local workforce during this time. Many processors are instituting health pre-screenings before potential employees board aircraft to Cordova, and regular or daily health screenings, including temperature checks while working. Additionally, the City of Cordova has clarified the following mitigation expectations. Groceries and supplies for quarantine staff available by delivery only. Social distancing of 6 feet must be exercised outside of work hours as per the city mandate. Safety policy and procedures need to be in place for office, facility, and contracted staff. They have to create social distancing in the facility as much as possible. All employees need to be educated on social hygiene measures regarding COVID-19. Clear signage regarding COVID-19 should be placed in common areas. Protocol on reporting illness should be clear to all employees, and it says to call CCMC or ICC immediately to report an illness, providing time for staff to don their personal protection equipment before arrival. Cleaning procedures should be increased in all common areas, and isolation quarantine areas need to be set up and available on site for potentially ill workers. So that's the end of the process or plan section. And for people who were wondering if the city is doing on this, anything about this, working with the processors, these are good details to have out there, and I'm glad they've given us an update on how that works. Next section in this news release, mutual aid agreements for fishermen. Per Cordova Emergency Order 2020-2, which, by the way, you can see on the city website, it's there, cityofcordova.net. Per that emergency order, all individual vessels and operators that wish to enter Cordova's harbor must sign a mutual aid agreement which identifies the measures taken by the city as well as protections provided by the operator to prevent the spread of COVID-19 amidst the operator's employees and customers and within the Cordova community at large. It also binds the undersigned, in other words, the people that fill out this mandatory form, it binds the undersigned to agree to follow state and city mandates and orders, including 14-day self-quarantine upon arrival, and to take responsibility for their crew to do the same. These agreements will be available in their entirety on the city website by Friday, April 3rd. A portion of that, by the way, is already on the city website, there's like an instruction page, and then the fill-in-the-blank part, but there's an appendix that is not quite ready yet because, of course, everything that the city writes or releases has to be vetted by the emergency personnel and the lawyers, and because they part of doing this properly when you have an incident management team is making sure you're not putting stuff out there that's wrong to the greatest extent possible. And actually, they talk about this in the news release a little later, so we'll discuss that. But again, and obviously, enforcement is challenging because human nature says there are going to be people who won't care or possibly won't know, although with all the signs and information and community response, you practically have your head in the sand to not know. But so the enforcement part of it will be interesting, but there is a requirement for all these vessel operators. I guess it'd be the skipper if you're just a one-boat operation, or, and again, if you have crew, they need to fill one of these things out and be on record saying, we know what we have to do for isolation and these safety protocols and all of that. And if you want to look at these, the information that's up so far on these documents, then go to cityofcordova.net. Next item in the news release is the Commercial Fishing Task Force. And it says, there are still many questions surrounding how to adequately communicate rules, protocols, best practices, and guidance to the broader fleet of commercial fishers who enter Cordova annually. That's the population everybody's concerned about. For this reason, and to increase open two-way communication between those within Cordova's commercial fishing industry and the city on COVID-19 related issues, the City of Cordova's Incident Management Team has established a commercial fishing task force comprised of fishing industry leaders from Cordova District Fishermen United, Copper River Prince William Sound Marketing Association, local processors, and Cordova citizens with knowledge and experience in the industry. This group will begin meeting regularly next week. And again, if you're joining us kind of in the middle of the program, this is the Thursday, April 2nd show. So next week would mean, Monday the 6th, if I'm doing my math right? That week. So sometime after the coming week. So that's encouraging, getting smart people in the industry together to decide what to do. Now, this is an interesting paragraph and may address what has been a pretty common frustration in the chatter regarding information getting out from the city to the public, because a lot of the concern, obviously, that's being raised and a lot of the fear that's being expressed is because of a lack of information. There are people that feel, and to an extent, I'm one of them, that feel that the information is not getting out as fast as or as thoroughly as people might want. But this section of the news release sort of addresses that. So let's take a look. The City of Cordova Incident Management Team's Public Information Team is composed of local qualified personnel that are working diligently to share accurate, pertinent, and easy-to-understand information with the public as often as possible. Before information can be shared, it must be verified for accuracy and confirmed to be within our legal ability to share. It must also be clear and concise and composed in a way that is least likely to be misinterpreted. Then, that information must be approved by Incident Command and sometimes the city attorney before it can be shared. If there seemed to be a lag in our response to any questions or concerns, this is likely the reason. Accurate information and good planning take time. We're all in this together and likely share a lot of the same concerns. Please work together with us to find the best possible solutions for Cordova. If you have specific questions, please send them to cordovaprepared@yahoo.com. Now, because all that vetting and research and, how do we say this so it doesn't seem to say one thing to one person and seem to say one thing to another person, which has been, by the way, one of the challenges of the state mandates. The state mandates are in kind of this formal language. They say one thing very clearly, and then a little later they seem to say it a little different, and, it gets kind of confusing. Our local team is doing everything they possibly can to avoid that, and they have a process to follow that makes sure that what they release is vetted so they don't have to retract it later. So there's always this balancing act, and it's tough, I know, because like I say, I feel it myself. On the one hand, you want to get information out as soon as possible so we can be less nervous. On the other hand, is it worse to put something out and then have to say, oops, we got that out too fast? I mean, this is what the national press does. They don't care at all. The ABC, NBC, all of them, Fox, whatever, they all want to get it out there as quick as possible. Breaking news. Aren't we awesome? We're on it. We did it first. They don't care about the accuracy. And then you find out they're wrong about 30 to 50% of it, and they have to retract it, and everybody's confused and nobody knows what's going on. And you don't want that in the middle of a pandemic when you're talking about official information coming out from your local government. Now, I'll tell you that I am working. I've had conversations with Mayor Copeland and the incident management team to see if we can step up the flow of information to get at least tidbits out more regularly and on the air, to help everybody understand the work that's being done, because so much of this happens behind the scenes and nobody sees it. I mean, this news release is 3 pages long, and I'd be willing to bet that it took 2 or 3 days to vet the information that's in it. So, on our side of it, on the general public side of it, we see this is all we get after all this time is 3 pages of printed information. Well, it's not like that, because there's all this work and discussion and drafting and fixing and revising going on in the background. So it's hard. And like I say, I totally understand. It's hard to take a breath and wait for the right information to be released. And like I said, we're going to be partnering on a hopefully more frequent basis with the city, with the team, with the mayor, to do more Q&A, to do more shows, possibly multiple times a day if need be, to get this information out so people have a better sense that things are happening, and they really are. I had a good conversation yesterday with the with the management team and the amount of stuff that they're doing. And it's very frustrating for them because they're go-get-'em type people. They want to get this stuff out there, but they just can't. It's not responsible. So for what that's worth, the rest of this news release is stuff that has been talked about before as far as closures and social distancing and so forth. So if you want to read that, I would recommend downloading it from the city website, cityofcordova.net. And if you have any questions, send them to cordovaprepared@yahoo.com. By the way, this series of extra shows that we're planning on trying to do with the city, a lot of the Q&A that gets addressed will come from questions that are sent to that email address. So I would make use of that, cordovaprepared@yahoo.com. Now, next important bit of information. CDFU has put out what they call COVID-19 resources for fishermen on their website. And let me read you kind of their cover letter here. The City of Cordova and the State of Alaska have both issued health mandates in response to COVID-19. It is your responsibility to comply with all health mandates and conduct your business in a way that keeps the community safe. This list of resources is a work in progress and will be updated frequently as more is known. Fishermen returning are expected to self-quarantine for 14 days upon arrival unless they have submitted a plan to the state of Alaska detailing how you will avoid the spread of COVID-19 and not endanger the lives of the communities in which you operate, of others who serve as part of that infrastructure, or the ability of that critical infrastructure to function. Let's read that again, because that's been an area of concern and confusion. Fishermen returning to Cordova are expected to self-quarantine for 14 days upon arrival unless they have submitted a plan to the state. And Cordova requires one, too. I think that comes up later. So there's been, again, in the chatter, there's been, do they have to be on a plan, or can they not be under a plan? Can they just la-da-da-da-da, do whatever they want because they're quote-unquote essential workers? No, they can't. Now, enforcement on that, don't know how that works. I got to be perfectly honest. I would assume, by the way, that I've been sort of playing in my head with an analogy between violating quarantine and DUI. In fact, it's funny. There was just a news story recently about how troopers found somebody on a highway asleep in their car because they were drunk and decided to pull over and take a nap. And when they approached the vehicle, they found the person intoxicated and not only cited the person for the DUI, but also for violating the state mandate. Because if you're out getting drunk, you're not performing an essential infrastructure service, and that's in violation of the state mandate. And that's up to $25,000 in fines, up to a year in jail. So we could probably draw some similarities between enforcement on these things. You know, if you have a drunk driver, let's create one. We'll call him Elvis. Elvis, at any time, not during the pandemic, Elvis decides to drive drunk. He knows he's not supposed to. He knows it's illegal. He knows he can get in trouble. Does it anyway. Elvis, big as a schmuck as he may be, is going to get away with that sometimes. He's going to make it home, won't get caught, but might kill somebody because of his behavior. It's dangerous behavior. You shouldn't do it. It's very risky. Tens of thousands of people are killed in the country every year because of drunk driving. However, even though it's illegal, the only way to absolutely, well, and it wouldn't be even absolutely because of bootlegging and stuff, but I mean, you could close all the bars and you could close all the liquor stores in this hypothetical to stop people from being, theoretically to drive drunk, but people are going to find a way to do it. So what you have to rely on is people knowing it's illegal, and it's that same thing. Some people will do it out of concern for the community. Some will do it because they don't want to get punished. Others will do it because they don't care or whatever their motivation is to drive drunk. Well, let's say Elvis is now, somebody who comes to a fishing community looking for work on a boat. Now, Elvis should know that's not legal. The law says you have to be working under a plan, and that information is spread all over creation in the state. Elvis would be putting people at risk by ignoring the quarantine. So much like drunk driving laws, these quarantine laws set the stage for what people ought to do, but it's the same thing. Some people will do it to protect the community, some don't want to get punished, and some don't care. So the way enforcement would work, I would assume, is if, say somebody's walking the docks saying, hey, anybody need crew? And they're not operating under a plan that's been submitted to the state or to the city, law enforcement would be able to approach somebody like that and say, excuse me, are you operating under a plan? And they would say yes or no, depending on their ethics or what they've done. And it's the same thing. You'll catch some people and you won't catch others. That's probably not a very satisfying way to look at it, but to me it's realistic in terms of the enforcement question. Probably will be similar to other things that people aren't supposed to be doing. So anyway, back to the CDFU document. Sorry to digress there. Fishermen returning expected to self-quarantine for 14 days upon arrival unless they have submitted a plan to the state of Alaska detailing how they'll avoid the spread. You can read this at CDFU's website. It also says CDFU is part of a statewide industry working group that is developing guidelines for catcher and tender vessel procedures during COVID-19. These are not yet finalized and will be posted when complete. Then CDFU also reminds their folks about City of Cordova Emergency Order 2020-2. Vessels and businesses operating within the City of Cordova will also be required to submit a mutual aid agreement to the city with details on how they plan to not be a petri dish. And the templates, well, as of this broadcast, part of the template is up. There's still another piece, the appendix, that is supposed to be up by tomorrow. So this is a good read for fishermen, and it would be very good to share this link with all of the fishermen that you know. Tell them, hey, if you got any questions about how this works, go to this website. And that speaks also to a larger point, which is something, like I said in our last show, that I'm really glad to see Cordovans doing is, on the one hand, you look at the legal side, what can we prevent by using legal mechanisms? And that has its place. But equally powerful is the efforts of folks to inform one another. If you know of a fisherman that's going to be coming in from the outside, or any worker, cannery worker, fisherman, whatever industry, and you want to help them to not violate quarantine, to not put the community at risk, share this stuff with them. Whether you call them, email them, hook up with them on Facebook, text it to them. Tell them, please look at the state website, look at the city website, look at the CDFU website. Please make sure you understand what the rules are before you come here. Because, as all of these people, I would think, know, we're basically an island. So pursuing the legal remedies, absolutely. But while doing that, also, let's all do as much as we possibly can to inform people about what the rules are and that kind of thing, and share the links and share the information. If you got somebody that doesn't have internet, I talked to somebody yesterday. They had a question about something, and someone told them, well, call KLAM. They know what's going on, which is sort of a horrifying thought to me. But, anyway, it was a question I could answer. But this was someone that just had a basic cell phone and didn't have internet access. If you know people like that, then pull these documents up on your computer or your phone and read them. Just read them verbatim to the person. That can be such a powerful thing for us to educate each other, doing that in conjunction with whatever the legal remedies are about borders and so forth. Because really, when you think about it, are people more likely to listen to their friends or some wordy document that they hear about on the news or, whatever? Here, are they more likely to listen to a friend or a government official? What's likely to be more compelling? Okay, how are we doing on time? Boy, this has already gone longer than I thought it would. The rest of this, I think we can cover on a different show. None of it is on fire. It was just some reminders about things. But so maybe we'll take this up tomorrow or on a future show. Let me point out that we have a plan in place to air a question and answer program with myself and the incident management team to air that on the radio after the 4 p.m. press conference on Friday. If you don't know, the city has gone to doing a kind of press conference update Fridays at 4 p.m., which they stream out on their YouTube channel. And then after that, there is talk of us airing a question and answer session to cover some of the most frequently asked questions that the city has been getting at their email address. And we're talking about the possibility of trying to make that live and interactive at some point, but there's such a backlog of questions already that the city's been getting at cordovaprepared@yahoo.com that we're going to start there with this first one, and then we'll kind of see how it evolves. And again, there's a possibility that I might be able to provide regular updates with the mayor, even on a daily basis, possibly in the future, and then do more of these sort of Q&A programs. So we've been able, as I've continued to talk to the city officials, we've been able to encourage more interactivity between us and them, and that's looking good. So I hope to be able to bring you good news in terms of additional communication. And we will come up with ideas for, even if it's not a live thing, where people are asking questions in real time or something, we will come up with ways for you to be able to share testimony or propose questions or, for example, anybody that has Facebook has the ability to create an audio message. I don't know if you knew that or not, but there's a little voice recorder built right into it. So say you wanted to have me include some personal testimony from you to the community in your own voice, the way you want to say it in one of these shows. You could make a recording, get it to me, and I can do that. Kind of in the same way, that we heard C1 and Luke speak last night at the council meeting. So we're going to figure all this out as we go. I was asked, actually, about doing live programming on a regular basis, which, from a purely democratic standpoint, seems like a great idea. The disadvantage of that, though, is that the city officials that you would be asking your questions of may not be able to give you the answer right then and would have to say, we're not sure about that. We'll have to get back to you. Whereas if the question is submitted as an audio file or as a text question or whatever, or like I say, your piece of testimony, if you want to say some stuff and then find out how officials react to it, if we have that in advance, then the answers can be more accurate and more thorough rather than somebody winging it. So there's a balance there. And I understand both sides of it. People wanting everything to be live and right now and maybe having to wait a day to get the answer. But we're figuring that out and are going to try to improve things for you. And city officials are being receptive to my inquiries about doing that. So Cross your fingers. Thanks for listening to the Town Meeting program. We're going to call it good for today. If we need to do another show soon, we will. And like I say, I hope expanded programming is coming in the future. We're brought to you on Town Meeting by Cordova Wireless Communications, a great supporter of local radio, which we really appreciate. The rest of your 10 a.m. hour programming will be on the way. And keep an ear on things because some sort of extra show or extra feature could pop up at any time, and I won't always be able to give a lot of advance notice. So, like I said, just keep listening or watching our Facebook pages. I'm trying to post our announcements on the various community pages that seem to be the most active in the midst of the pandemic here, so keep an eye or an ear on those things, and we'll keep you as up to speed as quickly as possible. Have a great day, be safe, and thanks for listening to Town Meeting.